So I've absolutely proven my points on these last three channels, especially Meklo, Robot, and Sid Jackson. I talk about a lot of the same things in all of these channels. Psychiatry being a fraud is so harmful and dangerous to society, how mental disorders are not defined correctly, but they're touching on something that has to do with the natural reaction to stress, a normal human condition or state of mind. And I've proven with gang stalking that political activists are targeted in a way that's likely to provoke them to stress, which will result in the mind naturally playing tricks on you, um, you talking quicker, you being more angry. The more you have to explain, the faster you're likely to talk. It's not natural, you know. When something happens to somebody and they run up and they're trying to tell someone urgently, you know, this is what happened, blah, 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 blah. And then you're like, slow down, tell me what happened. That's naturally what happens when something happens that you're dying to express. And when you're given a time limit, such as the news anchors on CNN, RT, ABC, etc., you talk quicker. So I also showed you the top psychiatrists who say psychiatry is a joke and the reforms that are needed in psych wards. I've shown you the perpetrators on my Sid Jackson channel, especially. I talk about pedophile rings, gang stalking, and the perpetrators, and how police turn a blind eye to these rings because they involve quote-unquote powerful people. I talk about 1 in 4 women are on psych meds, 1 in 7 men, and how a feminist psychiatrist only pointed it out because it has to do with women. So a lot of these alliances, they're weak because in the end, some of the individual members would do things that are counterproductive for their alliance. You know, feminist psychiatrists will speak out in a way that is bad for psychiatry because they want to help women so bad. Homosexuals will speak out in a way against women that's bad for feminism because they want homosexuals to take advantage of the MGTOW or men going their own way movement, for instance. I also talk about how Hitler was into the occult, whether you look at it as the Tool Society or his New Knights Templar membership, or the countless documentaries that talk about why he built certain structures in certain ways, etc. I talk about University of Phoenix contributing to the psych op. Their student population has been cut in half. And I wonder if it's due to people having similar experiences as well, and not just people not liking the school or not feeling they're getting the proper credit for their degree, than telling their family members. So I talk about how women betrayed man. I address homosexuals as being sinners. I show you countless martial arts. I show you my Officer White protests. I talk about the reasons ISIS is more righteous than America and how they give they've been accused of giving their soldiers Zolom, which is a pharmaceutical medication, and ironically they say that this prescription psychiatric medication makes them go crazy and more likely to do violence. And this is something they give people, you know, from Big Pharma, straight from your prescribed by your psychiatrist, by your quote-unquote doctor. You know, it's disgusting. I talk about how rape is an issue and the bigger implications of it, and how secret societies and rich people and fraternities at colleges get away with it. I talk about the Santa Clara County Sheriff Deputy's corruption and the corrupt Sheriff Lori Smith. I talk about the ills of white culture, white mainstream culture. I talk about other reasons, you know, women in sin and how Western women are evil and how America is the biggest terrorist of all, and they claim that, you know, that ISIS is evil and that they're so good. I talk about how, regardless of the situation, Freemasons will rape little children and have homosexual sex in Masonic lodges. So politics doesn't really matter. It's the effect of people pushing certain political agendas on society that they are concerned with. I talk about why we need to free Palestine from the liar Israeli Zionists. I Talk about the opposition lies and the media manipulation of this whole ISIS thing. Talk about comparing crime rates to ISIS versus America. Talk about how homosexuals are 10 to 12 times more likely to abuse a child. I mentioned Ezel Ford and police brutality, and I'd give a $1,000 reward for sexual assault that happened in San Jose. I talk about white privilege and white denial and how it's harmful to society, especially minorities. I talk about psychiatry and psychology are where society's problems start, psychology being the leading cause of death in adults, no matter how you look at it. You know, whether you look at it as health, things they convince you to eat and to put into your body, they convince you to go to war, they convince you to live your life a certain way, your lifestyle, and it results in number one cause of death in adults, and which causes most of these diseases that people get, the preventable diseases, including cancer in many cases. But I don't have time to get into that. And abortion is the number one leading cause of death in babies, and that psychiatry in many places is the leading cause of death in teens. Prescription pills, which is boosted by psychiatric medications, not just medications that overlap with psychiatry and painkillers, you know, like Percocet and Oxycontin. Talk about how modern females are materialistic and shallow, and they betrayed me. I speak why one God is superior to the Trinity. I go on about my martial arts challenge, which no one has still beaten me at. You know, I was in December 20th, 2014. Today's date is March 26th, or just 2015. The challenge was in December 20, 2013. And still no one has beaten me, and two people from AKA, the most famous gym from the UFC, have accepted, but they backed out of fear of losing. They pretty much conceded my point. Whenever anyone accepts and doesn't show up or doesn't agree to a time and a place, they have conceded my point. When people do not beat me, they have conceded my point. I bring up my oath and how much it has cost me and how angry I am at women for it. How my life would have been a lot easier. I've been a lot more calm if I had a wife, for instance, and we made love regularly, etc. You know, that's what got rid of the stress. I talk about vulnerable points and why me being the top martial artist in sparring and combat skills are the most important things when it comes to martial arts, and how martial arts is about perfection and combat skills are about, fighting, protection, and how my research into Egypt and Asia and all the historical martial arts places, Angola, Biafra, Brazil, the islands, etc., Korea, Japan, how it helped me build my mind, body, and soul and understand God better. Talk about the pharmacology, eugenics, institutional racism. I'm almost out of time here. I talk about a lot more on my Sid Jackson channel. I'll make sure that all these things are covered no matter what happens in the future. I'll have it on many channels. Talk about the difference between socially normative in American mainstream culture versus what is actually normal, which you have to consider the person's individual culture and personality type as well. Type A personality, according to psychology, is more hostile. So according to their own pseudosciences, there's different personalities that make people act different way, but they don't consider this at all when they're giving people harmful psychotropic and psychiatric medications. Talk about how they financially sabotage you, and I talk about being a transcendent warrior is more important than being a king, because they're usually remembered more than kings are, especially in Igbo culture, my culture, where we have names of people like all kings are bad, things of that nature. And so I'm going to end this with this book title. Okay, Fighting for Honor, the History of African Martial Arts Traditions in the, I believe it was in the